Welcome, friends, and namaste. Find yourself in an upright posture. So last week, we worked with interoception. We actually work with it pretty much every class I ever teach, but I pointed it out that turning inward on a really deep level and listening to your internal cues. This is a form of pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses. And I'm hoping that maybe we can move beyond just what we feel through the skin. I think that is a great access point. And then at some point in time, right, maybe we take our awareness into the insides of the shoulders and try to sense inside the body. I invite you to do that with me now. Bring your awareness into your shoulders. Anything you feel, just simply notice it. As always, non-judgmental experiencing, the best we can do today. The elbows. And again, I could have you just sit at the skin, and that's beautiful. It's so good to know any of the sensations coming in through those nerve endings in the skin. But you have sensory perceptors in your inner skin, in the inside of joints, right? And organs. Bring your awareness to your palms and your fingers. Again, I shared that of any body part, the most mental space is given to the hands and the fingers because they are used the most, at least for most of us. That's not everybody, of course. So take a few moments and get a felt sense of your palms of your hands and the fingers. And when you bring your awareness into your chest today, can you get a sense of your heartbeat? And if the answer is no, don't get frustrated. Don't think you're doing anything wrong. I have found in my own work that repetition, just consistently coming back and trying to sense, for me, it was my upper palate, a section of my left side of my back. And I don't know that I could feel my heart the first time I tried. Can I now? Usually. And as you bring your awareness into your abdomen, just tuning in, are any of the organs in there giving you any messages? Messages that you can sense. There's constantly messages between the brain and the organic body. Maybe you feel thirsty, hungry, sated. Maybe you feel flatulence, gas, bloating, the need to defecate, urinate, etc. A lot of these originate in the abdomen. And then let's go into the hips as our final stopping point here for the beginning awareness anyway. And again, imagine the inside of your hips. Sense them if you can. If you get no felt sense, one of my favorite techniques is, well, there are two. One of them is just to move or poke or prod a little bit and see if that doesn't help you wake up the area, making contact. The second technique I like to employ is visualizing that area. I like to imagine that I have this imaging screen in front of me, right? And the camera, of course, is on the inside of my hips, and I am seeing as if I am seeing the inside of my hips. Go ahead and open the eyes, and let's go ahead and start the movement portion on our backs. Grab a block. So you have that once you're down. Lower yourself down as per our usual. And then go ahead and bring that block right in between the thighs. Right? Bring your arms out into Shavasana and try your darndest to keep the upper body out of the next bit, right? First of all, just, I'm gonna add something in. I'm so sorry. I did this in my practice this morning and I loved it. Put your hands on your thighs. We've done it. It's just been a bit with the heels of the hands right in the base of the pelvis, right? And I don't want you to stabilize anything. You can just keep that block in there for now. Take an inhale with an exhale. Push the thighs a little forward. And what do you notice in your body when you do that, right? Inhale and soften. Where does the movement occur? Exhale, does movement occur, or are you just completely still? Do you feel a stretch somewhere? Do the bones move? Inhale, soften. And one more time, exhale, push the thighs forward. Keep pushing the thighs forward without trying to stabilize, noticing. And by the way, for some of us, we may or may not feel it, but this starts to stretch the diaphragm, which comes down and connects into a few different points in the sides of the ribs and into our fascia. Right, so go ahead and release that. Bring the arms out. Now I mean it when I say leave the upper body out of this part, right? With our really soft pelvic floor work we've been doing, right? Inhale, and with an exhale at like 20% max, move into the block. I would say between 12 and 20%, 20 is the max, right? Inhale and soften. That's your movement. You're going to keep doing that. Every time you exhale, you move into the block. Every time you inhale, you soften the pressure into the block, right? I'm going to add a few things in for you to just pay attention to, right? So again, this is that interoceptive sense, right? Sensory awareness training, I call it. Can you sense how when you move into the block, the inner groin turn up a little bit? If you cannot, you might put your hands on your inner groin and feel them and just notice if when you move into that block, you can't feel those muscles, can they turn off when you're not squeezing them? That's hard for me, by the way. And then when you move in, feeling that contraction, right? And then you can release the arms back down if you used them. Now bring your awareness into your perineum. That's that muscle between your genitals and your anus. Try to get a felt sense of the perineum. You don't have to make anything happen. I'll get to that in a second. Right now, it's just trying to sense how that is the very center of your pelvic floor. When you move into this block, chances are really great that the pelvic floor starts to do a light contraction, right? And then if you can get that sense, even if not visualize it happening, visualizing is incredibly powerful, right? And often does the action to a certain extent. No joke. They've done tons of research on it. When you move into the block, can you imagine, visualize, can you feel, can you help your perineum pull straight through the center of the body up through to the crown of the head? When I say up, you're laying on your back. I mean, right to the crown of the head on a horizontal line is how you're pulling right now. And then you'll soften, of course, and then you keep doing that. Try to get that perineum to move all the way up through the center of your body as if it's moving up to the crown of the head. That doesn't mean you start squeezing and doing things at 100%. I think that Kegels can be beneficial when done well. I don't think they're taught very well often. And I think people just jam into these. And so we overuse certain muscles, we underuse certain muscles. We tend to do a ton of them. And then these muscles get so tight, they can't become supple. And then women try to have babies and they just get ripped wide open because they were so tight, etc. Right? I'm not putting a horror story out there. I'm saying be willing to be subtle, right? Okay, so now you got that in your brain, hopefully, and an impression in your body. Put that block off to the side. Imagine the block is still there, arms are in Shavasana. Go ahead and move into that imaginary block. Try to find the perineum and the pelvic floor. Lift the right leg up into tabletop and exhale, bring the right foot down. Right, so we're going to revisit this from last week. I mean, we do this a decent amount, just the right leg at this moment in time. So first you can kind of notice, right? The right hip wants to drop low, the left hip wants to go higher. And you don't have to change that immediately, right? You can notice, this is the pattern, my psoas is overworking, whatever you happen to notice inside your body. Now, leave the foot on the ground for a second. Put your frontal hip points on your pelvis, start in neutral completely, right? With your hands on your frontal hip points, let that be a guiding factor. Try not to let the pelvis move. Find your pelvic floor, lift the right leg up in a tabletop, and now continue doing the exercise, trying not to let anything move except for that femur bone, right? The top of it is the round ball of the ball and socket joint. So the socket is still, everything else in my body is still. I have to use some contraction of muscles to make that happen. Right? And I'm lowering and lifting the right leg. And then the next time you have that down on the ground, simply put it down on the ground and pause. Notice what you notice, probably feeling more sensation on the right side than the left, which is part of the reason we're doing one side first and then the other. It's a really clear-cut way for a lot of us to really get a felt sense of what these things do and to really feel like, ooh, inside the hip joint, the psoas, maybe the knee, etc. Okay, so don't do a lot of stabilizing. I mean, find a little bit of pelvic floor, right? But then lift the left leg up and just notice, maybe this isn't happening in your body. Lift and lower it a couple of times and notice if your pelvis wants to move with the lifting of the weight of the left leg. Mine totally does. My left hip drops low, my right hip is high, right? Now pause and come to neutral. Put your fingertips on your hips. Some of us, we might put our thumbs on our ribs because our ribs tend to flare, right? So you probably know who you are. If not, pay attention to the ribs when you do it. Find the pelvic floor, stabilize the body. Try not to let the left hip lower, as you lift the left leg. And then now lift and lower that left leg. My heel is tapping a little in front of where I originally lifted the foot up because I'm keeping my 90 degrees, like whatever works for you, right? These are just some suggestions. And really, we're just trying to isolate, right? And in doing so, I think we really start to learn how to stabilize whatever part of the body we want to stabilize. I think it's brilliant to know how to stabilize a joint or the spine and then do the movement from somewhere else so you can bring this stuff into your life off of your yoga mat, right? And then bring that foot down into the ground and just soften for a moment. Notice if your shoulders got tight, your jaw got tight, right? Your neck, let them go if they did. Walk the feet wide, TV arms out, and do a windshield wiper or two, do a few of them, just to let the pelvis move now. So you're definitely not stabilizing at this point in time. So this is going to be kind of a quick one from on the floor here doing this kind of work, a shorter version this week. Walk back into hip distance, take the block in between the thighs, leave the arms teed out, move the legs into the block, try to find the pelvic floor. And when you lift the legs up into tabletop, try not to let your low back arch. Most of us, that's what's going to want to happen, right? Try not to let your ribs pop up. So we're trying to find that stabilizing with the weight of both legs. Now we're adding in a twist. There's one other thing actually I want to bring in. This is not wrong. There are many ways to do this, but did your heels move in together? If so, right, the legs are just in a non-neutral rotation. That's not wrong or bad. I'm just asking for observation. I say these things not because there's a perfect way to do it, but because it brings our awareness very present moment, right, in the body. So let the legs go over to the right. You can look to the left, pin the left shoulder down. The usual suspects for this twist that we do, right? And then Lord, bring them up. When you exhale, you go to the left, you can look to the right, pin the right shoulder down, and you'll inhale them up. The one I want you to bring the awareness to the most is that when you come back to center, take just a moment there and see if your knees really indeed are still over your hips, if your low back is in its neutral, natural arch, if your heels are separated out, or did they come back together again towards the midline, right? So check into what I'm going to call neutral, that space in between the twists on each side. And, you know, if any of those patterns change, like my right leg does the inward rotation a lot more, outward rotation, my heel moving in a lot more than my left. Like, so I observe that. That's interesting, right? That's also the hip that I have the tightness in and the SI joint issues and the sciatic, the things. How are those all tied together? I sure don't know. But I observe and I get little bits and pieces of my puzzle. Okay. When you're complete, come back to neutral, remove the block. And again, a couple of windshield wipers. Don't stabilize for this. Let the hips move wherever the heck they want to. And then come back to the center. Walk your feet into hip distance. You can use the block or not, right? But this time, we're going to bring the legs up into tabletop. So let me actually stabilize things first. You don't have to stabilize first. I teach that way a lot. You can move into something and then try to add stabilization. I just find it a lot more difficult when you're bearing the weight or you're in a difficult place, right, with your body. You're turned sideways, etc. So bring the legs up in a tabletop. Now start to straighten the legs, but only go as far as you can, keeping the low back in its natural curve, the ribs from flaring, the usual suspects. We didn't stretch the backs of the legs. So if you're like, oh, I can't straighten, yeah, I can't straighten my legs today either because I haven't stretched them for this, and that's okay. And then we're going to go ahead and again, notice where your heels want to go, to your toes want to point out, heels come together, all the things, right? And then let the legs go over to the right. If you're like, ooh, that is way more than I am ready for so fast in class, then you could go back to double bent legs, right? You add legs to the left, look to the right, pin the right shoulder down. So that stuff is all the same. Again, the thing I want you to pay the most attention to today, for today's purposes, is when you come back to that neutral position, that center position. You know, is your low back rolled down to the floor? Are your heels moving into each other? Are you dropping the block? Are you da 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 da? So try to, no matter what happens from side to side, try to come back and find that, what I'm calling neutral position in the center, right? Y'all know neutral is very different things each time we go into like a series or a set or a pose, etc. So please don't think neutral is just one thing. And then when you're complete, you're going to bend the knees and you're going to go ahead and you're going to put those feet down on the ground. You can remove the block. Notice what you notice. Now we have one more piece, and this is going to end up being a stretch, but it's muscular to get into it, right? So hug the knees into the chest. Let the knees move over to the right while hugging the knees into the chest. You can turn and look left when you get there. I'm going to keep probably turning a little bit towards y'all. And then from there, I'm going to try to straighten my legs any amount. Again, they probably aren't going to straighten as much as they usually do. We didn't prep the hamstrings for it. So be kind, right? And then I'm going to imagine that a Crystal Joy Johnson is pulling my left thigh / hip down to that right front corner. Y'all should know that one real good. Not should. That's a not a great word, but I teach this a lot, right? And then maybe that left heel pushes a little further and the left heel stacks a little more over the right, because I can almost guarantee the left heel is more by the ankle or the shin. That's not wrong. That's not bad. Bend the knees, come up to center. Just pointing these things out, right? We're just observing the body. That's all. Let the legs go over to the left. It's a vehicle, right, for our awareness right now. And then maybe you start to straighten the legs any amount. Let that right hip, thigh, right, move forward into the left corner of the mat. Try to lengthen out, that right low back, hip area. Maybe you push the right heel more towards the left so it lines up. Like I'm still not stacked. I'm above my ankle, but I'm moving it that direction. I'm reaching it that direction. I'm trying to reach my right shoulder down. Now bend your knees, come back to center, put the feet down on the ground, right? Walk the feet wide, lean the knees in, arms in Shavasana style. So constructive rest pose. And let's just take a few breaths here. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. Now try to slow your exhale down and let it last longer than your exhale if you can. And since I'm not telling you when to breathe, do one more of those. Do an inhale. The inhale is going to be a little shorter, the exhale a little longer if that's available for you. It's not a judgment on whether you can do it or not. Again, notice so much of this is a way for us to just be incredibly present and to play and work with our awareness, our consciousness. When you're ready, you can reach the arms overhead and elongate. Roll over to one side, push the floor away, come on up to your upright position. Close the eyes, notice the body. Bring those hands together in front of your chest, inhale. And as you bow your head in, just taking a moment of gratitude for these beautiful bodies. You woke up today in this beautiful body. Pretty awesome. Namaste. As always, thank you for playing, friends. Oh, I had something I was going to say, but now I lost it. So I'm still trying to bring some of that deeper pratyahara or interoception, right, into the work that we're doing from last week. So have fun and play with that. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I had a student, a gal, and she was like, you talked about how you got your jaw to release because your jaw was clenched for so long, and she has the same issue. And she's like, can you get how do I do it? How do I do it? And it's like, awareness is the number one key. If you're not aware of a pattern or something happening, you cannot change it. That's just consciousness, right? So awareness, 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 awareness. May we all be incredibly aware beings.